Hello, ladies. Happy Monday. It's your girl, Natalie, the Keto Bikini Pro, and I am back. Oh, I'm a little pumped up today. Just did an upper body day. Still haven't brought that left arm up to match my right arm symmetry. Grr. But hello. Welcome to another Monday Masterclass, Keto Bikini Secrets. Tonight, we are talking about peak week. What the heck is that? What do I mean when I say peak week? Oh boy, this is going to be a fun one. So I see a couple ladies on. Hello, Karen. Oh my gosh, Upstate Keto Girl. Tell me who you are again. I keep forgetting names. I'm like looking in close. Is that Lori? I keep forgetting who's who by these YouTube names. Although I got Bubbles has rules I know very well now. It is Lori. Yay. Okay, I thought so. Jody's on. What is up, Jody? Good to have you here. Who else is on watching? Say hi. Come let me know you're here. I got some new hair, y'all. We are flying out, Coach Mary Grace and I, on Wednesday to Florida. Becky's here. Hey, Becky. For the Keto Bikini retreat in Florida, our first retreat. Super, super excited. I've got suitcases laying around, stuff laying around, getting ready to be packed. So the packing is happening today. The laundry is happening today. Hair happened the other day, freshly shaven over here. So yeah, we're prepared for the retreat. And that is actually what sparked or inspired the topic tonight, because we are getting ready for the retreat and we will be having a photo shoot on the retreat for the ladies. It is not required to wear a bathing suit, so we are allowing everyone to choose what they want to do for their individual shoots, and then we'll be doing a group shoot that will be in cute casual clothing. So we are not requiring bikinis for this one. I actually had a comment I've been meaning to respond to on another video on YouTube. So Lexi, if you're watching this, I will get back to you there too. I want to make sure I get you the answer, but she was asking, are your retreats just for bodybuilders? Or I'm not sure how she worded it, but competitors, bikini athletes, no, not at all. As a matter of fact, I will be the only bikini athlete, the only bodybuilder, competitive bodybuilder, pro bodybuilder at the retreat. But I like to think of anyone who builds their body, goes into the gym and lifts weights with the purpose of building muscle to be a bodybuilder. So you are all bodybuilders, ladies, okay? Recognize that. You don't have to compete to be considered a bodybuilder. So in that case, then yes, it is for bodybuilders, anyone who builds their bodies. But no, all jokes aside, the retreat is for anyone in the community, not just the academy. We have ladies joining us who are not in the Keto Bikini Academy, who are a part of the Facebook group or YouTube, or have met me at conferences and events in other places. So anyone in the community is welcome to join us for our retreats. We will have another one coming up in November, which is going to be when I am competing in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen area. So we are putting out a poll on Facebook in our Facebook group and in the academy for to confirm those dates and details. So we will get back to you on all the good details about the Mexico trip next. You'll see all the fabulous, fun photos and the things that we're doing in Florida. And then if you want to join us, you'll have an opportunity to join us for the next one. Karen asked, how many do you have participating in the retreat? There will be 6 of us total for this one. So I'm excited. I think it's a really great size group. We have a Airbnb beach house, so it is perfect size to accommodate. It can be very tricky to get an Airbnb for a large group of people. Like more than 8. So this was kind of perfect the way it ended up. Everybody's going to have, almost all the rooms are solo. We have one room that'll be shared. So it'll be a blast. Yeah, so more to come on November, and then we'll be looking at 2025 locations, dates, and all that good stuff. We'll be getting that calendar ready. Okay, so all that to say, I was thinking about the retreat and the fact that we have this photo shoot, and of course, the ladies all want to look their best when we go on the retreat, and they're all in different places with their fat loss journey, fitness journey, health journey. So most of the ladies on the retreat, including myself, all of the ladies on the retreat will not be stage lean, okay? None of us are going to be that lean on this retreat. So I was thinking about this topic of peak week and what we do for competitions to get into our, what we call peak physique, or peak conditioning, you can consider it, basically bringing our best physique to the stage. And how could that apply to you in your journey, whether you are a competitor or not? If you are never going to see the stage, how can you take this information and use it in your own lives? And that would be, you have a special event coming up. You have a high school reunion or a family reunion or a anniversary trip or a wedding, your own or somebody else's, or your birthday or a vacation, a beach vacation, just the summer. You're getting ready for the summer. You have a first weekend, you're going to be wearing a swimsuit, something like that. We're talking about when there's an event on the calendar, a date on the calendar that you want to look your best for, okay? So I'm going to give you some tips on basically what I do for my peak weeks when I'm getting ready for stage, how that looks different from a high carb athlete and what a typical bodybuilder would do for a peak week, and how the things that I do can be translated into regular life for any of you at any stage in your journey, preparing for a special event and just wanting to look your absolute best. So let's dive right in.
Do it like it's your job. Step number 1.
Actually, you're not wrong. Okay. So most of the questions in the group were, what the heck is peak week? What does that mean? How does this apply? So what is peak week and what does it mean to peak your physique? So for competitive bodybuilders, peak week marks the 1 week out mark to when we are going to be on stage. So if the show is on a Saturday, then the previous Saturday, or technically Sunday, would be 1 week out exactly from the show. So that is our peak week. That is the week that we are preparing to peak our physique to get into that peak conditioning as we are stepping on stage. And for us, it's so specific because not only do we have to be ready for that day, but we have to be ready for the moment we step on stage, whatever time that might be. And we generally might get an idea of what that time might be, like possibly registration night, like the day before the show. We might get a tentative itinerary or flow of show, run of show of which category is going on when. But even then, we don't have exact times. And on the day of the show, usually something does not go to plan. And so the time you might have thought you would be on stage might be off by an hour or two. And so you need to be prepared for anything. So we are dialing in multiple variables so that we know how our body is going to look under certain conditions, so that when we step on stage, we have the best chance of winning or doing the best we possibly can in the lineup at that time. So there's a lot to think about there. Now, peaking for a competition is like a sport in and of itself. It can literally cost you a placing or lose a show for you after months of prep, getting to the leanest you've ever been, and you just peak wrong, and then you don't look very good on stage, and then you end up looking better the day after or the day before, and you don't even look like you came to play on the day of the show. That has actually happened to me before. I have messed up a peak and then ended up what we call spilling over on stage, where you look watery, you look puffy, you look bloated, you just don't look, your muscles are not popping the way we want them to pop on stage. And you would look at some people on stage and say, did they even prep for this? And it's like, yeah, I spent 5 months prepping for this. I just messed it up at the end. So I'm going to talk about what some of those strategies are and how and why you want to avoid them to not have that happen to you. But mainly it's going to be all about how you can take and apply the things that we do for you, apply it to your situation, your context, not necessarily exactly the way you would do it for a show. So first, let me explain what a traditional, typical high-carb bodybuilder approach to a peak week might look like, and why you don't want to try this at home, okay? And why I don't do this. Okay. First, typically a traditional high-carb bodybuilder will cut their carbs. So you might be like, hey, I already do that, right? Problem is, they're not increasing their fats. Remember when you first went keto, or for those of you who have not started yet and are thinking about it, one of the things you'll see all over the keto and carnivore space is you need to eat more fat. When you're taking the carbs out, you have to replace it with something because your body is looking for energy, and it's not going to get it from carbs. And if you don't put the fats in, and for us, we're going to talk in a minute about salt, if you're not using electrolytes, your body's going to be all kinds of out of whack, and it's a recipe for disaster. Well, high-carb athletes are already eating low fat and low calorie, especially by the time they get to the stage. They are barely eating anything but protein and carbs. Very bland protein and carbs. They're already not using much salt. They are, they're basically eating vegetables and chicken. Chicken, rice, vegetables, white fish, tilapia, asparagus. Lots of fiber and lots of protein and not much fat. So they come into peak week and now they drop out their carbs and they have no fats, no additional fats coming in, barely eating any fat, eating a bunch of protein, cutting out their carbs. And when I say their carbs, for them, carbs are the starchy carbs, the rice. They do a lot of rice. Some of them do cream of wheat, oats, all that kind of stuff. So they're cutting out the potatoes or the sweet potatoes. They're cutting out all of that. Probably still eating their veg, their fibers, and their proteins. Usually they will also cut down on fibers. I'm going to get to that in a minute. I'm going to talk about that piece. But they cut out their carbs. They feel like crap. They feel hangry and like death because they have no fuel coming in from fat, and they don't have the salt, and they are feeling the way you feel when you go through keto flu, and even worse because you don't have fat in there. So that's already a recipe for disaster. Along with the carbs, they cut out salt. Most of them are already not eating much salt, and now they even cut less. So they are depleting their carbs and they're depleting their salt. All the while, they are water loading. What is that? They're drinking more water than you could ever dream of drinking at a time. This is why you see bodybuilders carrying around gallon jugs of water. They are drinking twice as much water as they normally drink while they're cutting the carbs, while they're cutting the salt. For those of you in the keto space for a while, you already know what a disastrous situation this is. What happens when you drink a lot of water without replacing the electrolytes? What happens when you cut carbs? Your electrolytes are going bye-bye, which means headaches, weird nerve functioning. You can get those spasms. You can get muscle cramps. You can get all of that, right? Fatigue. These are the kinds of things that these athletes feel. And this is why, by the way, if you ever see fitness influencers and traditional bodybuilders, the carb eaters, sugar burners, saying that keto is a terrible idea and it's horrible for your performance and it makes you feel like garbage. It is because they have done this and they think that that's what keto feels like all the time. They think that's what happens when you go keto. But they're getting it wrong because they're not going. I mean, essentially, maybe they're dropping into ketosis. Maybe they never even get there because they're really only doing this for a few days. And then what they do while they're doing all this, by the way, so they start out that way. Then after water loading, carb depleting, salt depleting, they start water depleting. So they start pulling the water out. Along with that, they might be taking diuretics. There's all kinds of supplements and diuretics that they'll take to dry out, is what they call it. They're trying to basically dehydrate themselves. So, yes, Karen, exactly. They're not doing keto, they're starving. So now they're starving. After they have water loaded themselves, they now dehydrate. Now you're starving and dehydrated. And then what do they do right before the stage? They, depending on, there's lots of different strategies out there based on the coach doing it different ways. Front loading and back loading carbs, there's all kinds of things. So they may start a few days out. They may, different timing that week, but then they start carb loading. So they have water loaded, salt depleted and carb depleted. Now they're water depleting and they're filling back up with carbs and sometimes salt. Some of them use salt at this point in time too. So they're doing that to fill up the muscles with glycogen and make the muscles plump with carbs, because carbs hydrate the tissues, including the muscle tissues. So they're filling their muscles back up with carbs and salt, and they generally don't add the water back in yet. So this could be an absolute disaster, and for some people it is. If they don't time it right, they will spill over. They'll look a puffy, bloated mess, all that. Some athletes who really screw it up can end up in the hospital with edema, serious edema, and it could be fatal if they really don't do this right. Now, where does this come from? It actually comes from steroid use, performance-enhancing drugs, PEDs. So bodybuilders on steroids, this has a profound, more pronounced effect in their bodies because they have these drugs in their system. And it all has to do, I know nothing about PEDs and actually, what these protocols look like because I've never used them myself, never worked with a coach that instructed me to do so, thank goodness. But they play with the timing of all these things with the PEDs, and so it actually manipulates what their bodies look like on stage, especially the large, like heavyweight bodybuilder, the men we're talking about that you see at the Arnold and the Olympia and the big huge guys, right? This does not work as well for natural athletes, and it can certainly backfire badly. So most educated, experienced, legit, long-term coaches and athletes in the space, but especially coaches these days, are not recommending this kind of stuff anymore. Now, that doesn't mean that the grand majority of coaches and people out there in the industry are not doing this. I still hear about this all the time, and I see it in groups. I see it in competition groups and things of that nature. And a lot of uneducated athletes who are just doing whatever their coaches say. And there's a lot of coaches out there, and there's a lot of bad ones. So I would not work with a coach who wanted me to do this kind of stuff. I've always worked with coaches who were, if they were versed in PEDs and worked with athletes who were on them, they were also versed in natural and worked with natural athletes and would work with me as a natural athlete. So all that to say, I wouldn't mess around with any of that crap. Now, there are keto and carnivore coaches and athletes out there, competitors, who will play with carbs as a part of their peaking strategy. Typically, these are coaches and athletes who carb cycle as a part of their carnivore or keto approach. They will have higher and lower carb days. They will have carb ups here and there. And so their bodies are already metabolically flexible going between carbs and fats for fuel. And because of that, and because they are usually very, let's say, high-powered athletes, they will go through the carbs very quickly and they'll get back into ketosis pretty quickly. Even that strategy of using carb cycling is not something I recommend for anybody who is dealing with insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, who is obese, overweight, overfat, and needs to change their body composition. If you are already lean, fit, healthy athlete level, then you can play with carbs and you can do all kinds of carb cycling maneuvers and it will not affect you the same way. So always context. That's what I always like to put to these things. So if you're a person who handles carbs well and you do not have digestive bowel problems, they don't give you inflammation, they don't cause issues with an autoimmune disorder or blood sugar for you and things of that nature, then something you could try is something that some keto and carnivore athletes will do, which is they will carb up like high carb athletes do before a show. They will likely not need to do it to the level that a high carb athlete would do because they came from eating hundreds of carbs, they cut it down, and then they go back up to maybe hundreds of carbs. A keto or carnivore athlete may only need 50 grams of carbs, 25 grams of carbs in a bolus to fill those muscles up and get that kind of pumped look. And so that's something you could try. I have tried that with my coach. The year I got my pro card, we did a couple of mock preps, test prep peaks before my show. I did not do well with the carbs. We decided not to bother with that. And that is how one of the steps, one of the ways that I found the way that I handle my peak weeks now, that is to me the best thing since sliced bread, better than sliced bread. I should say sliced bacon. And it's, I don't have any desire to play with carbs for a peak week anymore. All right, but that is something that you could try. All right, so let's get into the how to peak in a healthy way on a keto carnivore diet and what I would consider the best way to peak on any diet, regardless of what diet you're following. If you're higher carb, low carb, keto, ketovore, carnivore, any of the above, these tips will still apply to you. So, step number 1, this cannot be underscored enough. You have to get lean. Particularly if we're talking about a show, but also let's talk about that special event you're thinking about, right? Let's say you're thinking about your birthday next year. Shout out to Dana, who I'm sure will watch this replay at some point, in the Keto Bikini Academy, who is prepping for her birthday next November. It is a milestone birthday, and she's already thinking about it from now. If you have an event a few months away, a year away, 6 months away, this is the best time to prep before the peak, because the key here and the secret is that there's no secret to peaking that is magically going to fix or make your body look completely different than it does 7 days later. Okay, so that's the harsh truth there is if you have vacation in 7 days and you're like, yes, she's going to teach me what I can do in 7 days to transform and look like I've been on this diet for 6 months. It ain't going to happen that way. Okay, if I go on stage tomorrow, I'm not going to look the way I'm going to look on stage in 10 weeks. In the photo shoot we do on Saturday, I'm going to peak the rest of this week, but I'm not going to look on Saturday the way I'm going to look in Mexico in November. It's going to be different because I'm not that lean this time. Okay. So first and foremost, you have to get lean enough to look the way you want to look. So you can't create muscle that's not there, and you can't magically remove body fat that is there today. It's not going to be, gone in 7 days unless maybe you go under the knife. And that's a whole different topic. But first things first, stop trying to do everything in a week. Stop trying to, I'm going on vacation in 2 weeks. Now I have to go on a crash diet. That's not what you're going to hear me tell you tonight. So no crash dieting, no miracle cures in 7 days. Okay, peak week is not the time to decide, oh my God, I haven't been doing the things. Now I'll do all the things times 10 to get there faster. Matter of fact, it will probably make you look worse because of all the other things I'm about to mention here. You'll end up stressing your body out and carry a whole bunch of inflammation and hold on to water weight like crazy. So work on the work in advance. Okay, I just had my eye opener, my, what do you call that? Coming to Jesus, I suppose. Yeah, I had a wake-up call. That's what I'm looking for, the word wake-up call. Comparing where I am at 10 weeks out to where I was in my last prep 10 weeks out. I got work to do. And guess what I'm not going to do? I'm not going to leave it for the last week. I got to do the work now and go hard now so that on the last week, I don't have to try to make miracles happen. So that's the best tip I can ever give you. Start early enough and work on getting that transformation that you want in the proper timeline, not those last 7 days. All right, now, and with competitors, nothing will make you look better if you're not lean enough in the first place. So a lot of athletes try throwing all this stuff at it in peak week because they didn't get lean enough. It's not going to improve your physique to that extent. These little tricks are meant to improve and peak a physique that is ready to be peaked. So keep that in mind. All right, number 2, and this is a big one. I know that most of my carnivore followers are already doing. And many of you who have ever done an elimination diet have already done this. But during peak week is not when we eat any foods that are either new to us or that we know might cause a reaction. So eating safe foods is what I'll call them. Eat safe, tried and true foods. The foods that you eat on a regular, consistent basis that you know your body loves and thrives on. So you are going to figure out for your peak week, for whatever your event might be, what are the 5 foods that I could eat every day and know that my body is going to look and feel its best. For me, it's steak and eggs. For some of you, it would not be eggs. I typically will start my peak week with steak and eggs, and I will end my peak week the last couple of days before the show and show day, just steak. The only thing I eat in the days leading up to the show and on show day is just steak with salt. That is it. Everything else comes out. So get to know, here's the key here. It doesn't have to be steak and eggs for you. Get to know your body in advance. So all that time that I prep, this was an 18-week prep for me. I'm 8 weeks in, I have 10 weeks to go. By peak week, I should be really clear on what those foods are that I thrive on. And any food that causes me gas, bloating, stomach distension, inflammation of any kind is out for peak week. At least 5 days out to the show, but ideally the whole peak week. So on my peak weeks, all the extras come out. Things that I love that might help and make my diet sustainable to enjoy the diet and not feel super deprived all the way through. Like right now, I'm loving my coconut yogurt with protein powder and egg life wraps. Mary Grace knows what I'm talking about. Stuff is bomb. Okay, love it. But my body doesn't love it. I feel that little bloat, gas with things like that. Egg life wraps are made with xanthan gum, which is not great for my gut. Some of y'all have reactions to that. So something that even high carb, what I mentioned earlier, is that something that even high carb competitors do for peak week is the really fibrous foods they take out. They will reduce the fibers. Lots of high carb athletes, they live on a lot of fibrous veggies because it's volume food. And like I said, they're not eating a lot of fat. So they're eating a lot of carbs, and those fill up their plate with more volume and help them feel more full, which we don't have to worry about as much on keto and carnivore because fats and proteins together are very satiating. So we can feel a lot more satiated for longer than high carb athletes. But all those veg that they eat most of the time, they take those things out during peak week because they don't want anything to cause that stomach to poke out on stage. So cut out the veg, cut out the super fibrous foods and the things that have added fibers to them. If you are one of my keto ladies who loves her keto treats, take a look at those ingredients and cut out the things that have the added fibers. Added sweeteners. A lot of sweeteners cause problems that you don't even know that it's causing. Sweeteners are out. For me, I'm dairy-free all the time, so I don't take out dairy during a prep because I didn't have it in my diet in the first place. For those of you who eat dairy and you think it doesn't cause you any problems, I can almost guarantee that if you took it out, ideally, you would do this in advance of a peak week and do it for 3 weeks to 4 weeks at least, and then reintroduce to see how you actually respond to dairy. And I always have to say this, butter is dairy. I'm sorry, but it's true. Take out all the dairy, including the butter, and see when you bring it back, if you notice anything. Most of the time, the answer is yes. And most of the time, we're trying to convince ourselves that it's not because we like dairy a lot. But dairy would not even enter my mind. And most competitors, to be honest, are not consuming dairy during peak week. Many of them cut out dairy for at least a portion of their prep, if not the whole thing. A lot of competitors cut out whey protein powders during that last week. I usually cut out protein powders. I definitely noticed, and I noticed it when I was at the cabin the other weekend when I was not doing my protein powders in my yogurt like I usually do, how much better I felt, how much less gas and bloating I had. So the powdered supplements, the dairy, if you eat nuts and seeds, this is a great time to take them out. Any packaged product, even, the keto meat sticks and things of that nature, sometimes they're adding stuff in there. It's just harder to break down. None of that stuff would be on my plan for a peak week. For a peak week, I would go clean, fresh meats, eggs, unless you have a sensitivity to eggs. I would go easy on the egg whites during a peak week. For me, during peak week is when I'm doing whole eggs. I'm not doing egg whites. I'm not adding egg whites to my eggs. Even if I was doing that leading up to get lean enough, that's when I do away with the egg whites because I don't handle those as well as the whole egg with the yolk. So egg whites is another thing that can cause people problems. Fruit. A lot of athletes are not doing fruit anytime near a show. At some point in their prep, most of their fruit or all of their fruit gets cut out. So you're going with simple, easy, digestible foods that digest well for you, that you're not going to have to experience any kind of inflammation or water retention of any kind. Figure out what those foods are for you, make your little list, and then test this out. Try out a mock peak week and see how you feel. I mean, if you think about it, it's practically going lion diet, plus maybe a few more things that you can handle. For me, I go pretty much lion diet, but I'm keeping my coffee in. I cut way back or completely cut out my creamers or additives to my coffee. Show day, I'm usually doing black coffee. Maybe I'll still do MCT oil. If anything, that'll help clean me out even better on the day of the show. But I do MCT in my coffee every day, so that's not out of the ordinary for me. All right, that's number 2. Figure out the foods that work best for you and simplify as few variables as possible on that week leading up to the special event. Number 3 is pull back on training intensity and prioritize your recovery. To reduce inflammation, competitors cut back on training duration, intensity, load. This is when you drop the weights. I mean, usually around a show, our strength has taken a hit anyway because we're so lean and so depleted that at that point, we can't push the old weights we used to be able to push anyway. But this is where you see competitors closer to a show doing more pump workouts, meaning some higher reps, much lower weight, just to kind of pump up the muscles, get the inflammation out, not cause more muscular damage that needs to be repaired, which is what we do when we're regularly training for muscle gains. We are breaking down the muscle in the gym, and then it has to repair during recovery. A competitor is not making gains a week before the show. Gains left the building weeks before the show, maybe even months before the show. So by the time we get that lean, we're not worried about gains at that point. It's about recovery. It's about getting a pump and then recovering and letting your muscles rest, letting your body reduce the inflammation. So it's not time to go harder on your training when you're like, oh, I have a photo shoot tomorrow, or I'm going to the lake with my friends and I want to look really good, so I got to do a harder training session. You will probably shoot yourself in the foot because the next day after your training, you're going to be inflamed and you're going to look watery and puffy. You do not want that. My ladies can tell you when we start a new training program, they see the scale go up, they feel super sore, their muscles are struggling. So don't go super hard right before an event. Usually, particularly leg days, you want to stop a leg day like maybe a couple of days out before the event. You don't want to be pushing hard on legs right before the event because then you'll have all that extra inflammation. So pump workouts, don't train extra hard, pull back on the intensity, pull back on the cardio intensity and or duration. If you're doing HIIT cardio, high intensity interval training, slow down on that. That's usually when I will just be walking, maybe a brisk walk intensity rather than HIIT training the day before my show. So recovery activities. I usually like to get a massage about 1 week out to the show. I don't like to do that too close because that could also cause things to cause your body to retain water in certain areas rather than others. There are some specialty massages you could get that are designed to help your body peak. But those are more advanced for super advanced athletes. I wouldn't recommend that for a typical event and for Gen Pop. So get a massage maybe a few days before or a week before the event. Start letting that body calm down. Saunas can be great. You don't want to overdo it, but saunas can be great for that, helping to get some of that inflammation out. Make sure you're hydrating well afterwards. Absolutely nothing will beat sleep. And we see this all the time, no matter where you are in your journey. When you're not sleeping well, your body's not recovering well, it holds on to fat, it holds on to water, it holds on to inflammation. So sleep is absolutely essential. You have a big event coming up, prioritize your sleep like it's your job. Protect that bedtime, and that's nighttime routine and that morning routine, okay? Other things. This is when we usually do the pampering. So before a show, like I got my hair done the other day. I've been tanning. Might try to get my nails done once we get down to Florida because I didn't do it yet. But these kind of like relaxing, pampering kind of things that you can do. You don't want to be running around doing all this beautifying stuff, causing a lot more stress. I've had that happen, days before a show. It's raining. I just got out of my hair appointment. I'm trying to protect the hair, but I have to go get to the tanning salon and I have to do this spray tan, and then it's raining, and then all this crazy stuff. And then I'm eating at weird times because I didn't plan for all that. And then it just creates more stress, and that does not help the situation. So this is now number 4, reduce stress. Reduce stress and practice proper stress management techniques. So cut out anything extra that could drive your stress up the days before, the week before an event. If there's a lot going on in your life right before the event, or let's say maybe you're hosting the event, right? In your life, maybe it's something where you're hosting and you have to do all this work in advance. Ask for help, ladies. Please start asking the people in your lives for help. Ask your husband, ask your family, ask your kids if they're old enough to help. Get help from others. Take time off work if you can. This is always what I do around a show, or when I was working full-time. Took time off, plan in the schedule to have time off before, and ideally the day after, at least the day after the event. But leading up to the event, take that extra time, do what you need to do for your stress. Meditation, reflection, quiet time, extra sleep. Put those things in place. That is absolutely key for getting your body to look its best. All right. Number 5 is stay hydrated, my friends, which I'm about to not be, because that's my last sip for right now. Don't do the crazy water loading and water cutting, or sodium loading or sodium cutting, but be aware. Start to dial in, get familiar with your regular hydration levels. How much water in ounces you're drinking, or in liters, or whatever you want to use to track it. Start tracking your water consumption so that you can get a baseline of how much water do I normally drink? How much electrolytes do I normally take? Lately, and you'll see it, I just filmed it today. It'll come out later this week, my next YouTube update on this prep. I show you my data and my spreadsheet and how I'm tracking everything. I track my water, my total electrolytes using Chronometer for what's in my food, as well as all the supplements and the salt that I'm using in my food. And then prior to a show, I manage my salt intake to make sure I'm not changing something drastically right before the show. So before your event, you don't want to be changing something, throwing things out of whack, and then asking your body to try to adjust and find that homeostasis again. That's when we retain water. When the body's like, oh, snap, I don't know what you're doing. Hold on, let me pull from here and hold on to this, okay? So the best thing you can do, just like figuring out those safe foods, is figure out what your regular hydration level is and try to maintain that. You may need more or less water or more or less electrolytes based on if you're sweating more or if you're sweating less. If you're pulling back on that intensity in the gym, maybe you don't need as much as you normally do, but you need to get really in touch with your body and what it does and how it reacts to what you're doing. If you have no idea what you're doing and you're getting ready for this event, I can't just tell you, drink 2 gallons of water. I don't know what you're normally doing. So get to know your regular hydration levels and try to maintain that homeostasis, but also pay attention to what your body's doing and learn how to adjust one way or another. The big key with peaking your physique is knowing your body better than anyone else. I would have to send photos to my coach multiple times a day, but guess what? I could look in the mirror 2 to 5 times more than the photos I can send to him. He's going to look at photos and try to tell me what to do based on the timing of what he saw in the photos. I'm going to be I can look at my body and feel how things feel on my body. How is the digestion? How do I feel with that amount of water? all of those things on a regular basis. So get to know that on a regular basis. No coach can tell you what to do better than you will know your own body if you tune in. So do that in advance. And then on peak week and leading up to that event, you'll know how much water is appropriate for you to be drinking at that time. OMG, look who showed up. What is up, Whitney? Glad to have you on, love. All right, 2 more things here. Number 6. This might sound crazy coming from me, but pull back a little bit on that protein and increase the fats with salt right before the event, not right before. Like I wouldn't do this right before I step on stage, like in that last hour before stage, because I'm not going to digest all that quickly. But the night before, let's say, the night before, or 2 days before, or 2 nights before, and then the very night before. Typically, this is when I will start having my higher fat steaks. The best I've ever looked and felt on stage when I had a ribeye the night before the show. Fattier cuts of meat because they digest better. Now, I was not having braised short ribs. I was not having like some, luxury. I wasn't having pork butt. My body doesn't work well with that. So like I said, you need to know your body. This is not the time. A lot of coaches will have their athletes go and have a cheat meal the night before the show. And this is really simply because they want them to get a bunch of carbs, a bunch of salt, and sometimes they also include a bunch of fat. Like the high carb athletes, the high carb bodybuilders, their coaches will go have them eat a burger with the bun, with the fries, all of it. But the main thing is the carbs, the salt, the fat, all of those things. The body's just going to soak up and hold on to all of it because these athletes are so lean and so depleted at that point that it's not going to have a detrimental effect on their body composition at that point. But pulling back a little on those protein, the high protein, let's say you've been doing, Juliana's about to come on the retreat with us. She's been doing PSMF days. We've got her fats pretty low at this point. If you have been eating pretty low fat, you've been cutting for a while and you've got these fats down pretty low. The peak, the day before the event, would be a good time to have a higher fat meal and pull back a little bit on that protein because your body will likely be able to digest that better, and it won't have that detrimental effect. However, I also have to say this. As I said, number 1 was you have to get lean enough. So for my ladies on your journey, if you still have a lot of body fat to lose, this may not be the move for you for this particular event. Maybe you wait until you get leaner. The reason it works so well for those of us when we are so lean for stage is because that fat is not about to put body fat on us at that point in time. Our bodies are loving those nutrients. And when you get low on calories, it's harder to digest anything at that point. So the higher fat meats work better at that point in time. So I usually like to do a little bit fattier steaks for my show day and the day before and maybe 2 days before. And I don't try to hit the higher level of protein that I had been trying to hit right up until then. So that leads me to number 7, and that is test it out in advance. Never, ever, ever go into a special event, a photo shoot, a vacation, or whatever it is, throwing something new at it to try and get some miraculous result like I was talking about at the beginning here. Whatever you're thinking of doing for that event, do a test run. 1 week out, 2 weeks out. I love it when I get lean enough or relatively lean enough 4 weeks out. I did this when I made my pro day, when I was about to get my pro card, when I was working toward my pro card. We did a mock prep 4 weeks out. We did another one 2 weeks out. So by the time we got to peak week, we knew what we were going to do. And this is how we knew not to play with carbs, because we tried that at 4 weeks out and it didn't work well with me. So this is a great thing you can do. And regardless of where you are in your journey or how lean you are or not, you can take the 7 tips I mentioned here. A lot of these can be used even when you're not peaking, working on getting lean, doing the things you need to do to get there. That's number 1. Number 2, eating safe foods, figuring out what foods your body thrives on and does the best with and does not react poorly to. You can try that anytime. Pulling back on training intensity and prioritizing recovery. You can do that anytime. You could do these 7 things for a week, even when you don't have anything going on, just to test it out and see how your body responds to doing these things. Let's say you're on a long-term fat loss, body transformation journey. You could take maybe every 8 weeks, you could decide to do a practice peak week every 8 weeks or every 12 weeks, every 3 months or so, 2 or 3 months, and take a week where you're like, I'm going to do an elimination diet and get down to the foods that I think treat me the best. I am going to pull back on my training intensity and take a deload week and prioritize my recovery more than I usually do. I am going to pull back on cardio if I've been doing intense cardio. I am going to reduce my stress. I'm going to put in some pampering activities and stress relieving activities. Maybe I'll take a bath or take a sauna or go to the spa or get a massage. I'm going to stay hydrated. I'm going to dial in my hydration and recognize what I need and pay more attention to that. I'm going to maybe pull back a little on my protein and pull my fats back up. This would look like more like a refeed week. Doesn't have to be a massive refeed every single day, but maybe it's a little bit of a diet break week where you're like, I'm normally eating 150 grams of protein and 75 grams of fat. Well, I'm going to actually go 125 protein and 100 fat for a week. And if you're paying attention to your calories, you can still maintain a caloric deficit and just switch up those macros a little bit. That's your test week. And then you can do that whenever you want to try it. But I love the idea of doing something like this, doing a mock peak week every 9th week or 13th week, after 2 or 3 months of consistency with your body transformation protocol, your fat loss phase, your whatever you want to call it. As a matter of fact, this might be something I consider building into some of our programming in the future. That would be kind of a cool program. Maybe next year when we do our spring prep for summer that we did this year, if we do that one again, where we're really taking you through what it's like to do a prep, we could build in mock peak weeks. Ooh, that's fun. Or we could even try doing like a mock peak week challenge, just a 1-week challenge, and put some parameters around it and run y'all through a mock peak week. That would be fun. Okay, Mary Grace is watching. Girl, take some notes because we got some things to talk about when we get to Florida. This could be a fun thing to do. All right, ladies, anybody have, those who are on live, anyone have any questions about what this whole peak week thing, sounds like now that you've heard some details about what peaking looks like, why we do it, what are some of the things I recommend, any specific questions or how to apply it to you if you're not sure? I'm just under an hour this time, and I'm about to go hydrate myself. Mary Grace is down. She's like, I love that idea. Peak week challenge. Ooh, that's fun. Hey, we could do it maybe for the November retreat. Since I'll be in peak week for my show, y'all could peak along with me. That would be fun. Okay, that's what I want to do now. I'm putting that out in the universe. Peak week challenge, peak with me, November. Oh, Whitney has a question. I think I have a follow-up question for you. Since you're in it, are you manipulating things down to the wire with foods? What do you mean by that? Yes, Mary Grace, peak with Coach Nat. Woo woo. Oh, Whitney says I came on super late. So you probably missed that part. Yeah. Number 2 was eat safe foods. So learn the foods that your body does not do well with and whittle it down. So yes, I mentioned that on my peaks. I usually eat steak and eggs. And then the last day or two before the show, I usually just eat steak. And then show day is just steak and salt. And a little bit of water. I do drink water on my show days. I didn't mention this. I don't do the water loading and water depleting, but on show day for competitors, since we are wearing a bikini that we cannot easily get off and back on, and you can't run from backstage to the bathroom immediately before you go on stage and you don't know when you're going to be going on stage, you do tend to end up dehydrated on show day anyway. Because you don't want to be guzzling water on show day for that reason. So typically I will keep my water the same. And then show day is typically when I'm just sipping carefully to try not to have to go to the bathroom all day. Yeah, and this is a great question. She says that last week of peak week, as you observe your physique, do you change things at all during that last week? Yeah, so that's where I said what we don't want to be doing is changing anything. We want to figure out what works and then ride it out that week. That is when you don't want to be throwing anything new at it. And yes, indeed, peak week looks so different for non-carnivore folks. Yes, I opened the class with a explanation of what it looks like for a traditional high-carb bodybuilder and why you don't want to be doing those things. But also that, these days there's a lot of high-carb, athletes who don't screw around with that stuff anymore, and they have learned. And there's a lot of, especially natural athletes and natural coaches, who encourage not doing that stuff and doing just what I said. Figure out what works well for you, stick with those safe foods, and then they might do a refeed or a carb up, before the show, but that's pretty much all they're doing, and they're not trying to do any of the crazy stuff. But like I said, there are good and bad coaches out there. They're a dime a dozen. They're everywhere. So there's still a lot of shenanigans being done. But I mean, anybody who I've ever listened to, I respect in the industry, is not encouraging that kind of stuff anymore. Thank goodness. There's a lot of voices of reason these days. And for those of you, I did mention the carnivores out there who can handle carbs and are maybe choosing carnivore for a particular reason, but it's not because they have severe reactions to anything. And they can do carb cycling, and they've used carb cycling throughout their preps. Many carnivore athletes still choose to use carbs prior to a show, but it's not been my experience. My absolute best peak weeks have been ribeyes, New York strips. I did do sirloin, I think, this last time, but I would prefer not to do that. I probably won't be doing that next time. It's just too lean. So I prefer I'll probably be eating ribeyes this year. But I got to get lean enough first. So these next 10 weeks, really these next 8 weeks, your girl's going to be going hard because we got some ground to cover. We got to make up for being behind right now. But y'all will hear all about that in this week's episode 4 of my prep updates. So Yes, Whitney, she says, are we going to see your week by week pics at some point? Yes, I've done, on Instagram, I've been posting some updates, not as frequently as I wanted to. I think every other week or every 3 weeks or so since I started this prep. I'm 8 weeks in now. I've done 3 YouTube episodes, which are updates. I'm calling it Keto Bikini Prep 2024. At the start of those YouTube videos, I start by showing my videos, my posing videos. So I do a little physique update at the beginning of the video, and then I get into all the nitty-gritty details. So I've done 3 episodes so far, and then I'm getting ready to do, I just did the 4th one, recorded it today, and that'll be coming out later this week. So actually, I'm working on a post right now that was going to happen today that will probably now happen tomorrow, or later tonight if I'm finally finish it. That is from last week's check-in, because I'm a week late doing that because we were at the cabin. So, but it's funny, you'll see the cabin behind me, all the wood behind me, in that check-in. And then probably tomorrow, I'll actually do my check-in photos and videos for this week before we fly out on Wednesday. And then that will be posted probably next week. So I'm kind of a week behind on all of those. And the prep updates have been like every 3 weeks because craziness keeps happening with my cycle and my hormones and getting sick and traveling and all the things. So I'm looking forward to fully being present with the ladies this week at the retreat. And then after that, when I get home, I will not be doing any major travel again before the show. We are doing Ketopalooza. Bronson and I are speaking at Ketopalooza in October, but that's only going to be like a quick 2.5 day, trip over the weekend. So all the major travel and big things going on will die down after the retreat. So this is it's kind of cool too, because when we get back from the retreat, I'll be 9 weeks in and 9 weeks out. So it'll be my exact halfway mark, and it will be time to go balls to the walls. So my goal is that starting next week, I'll be able to start doing weekly updates all the way up to the show. So the last 9 weeks, I plan to do an episode per week, which I wanted to do this whole time, but Mother Nature keeps throwing me a curveball every freaking 21 days. So let's hope that the cycle lengthens out a little bit and that these symptoms are not as bad this month, so I can show up for y'all. It's been a little bit rough, but you'll hear all about that if you check out the last episode where I talked about all that mess. And then this week's episode, when it drops, I'm going to talk more about more of that mess and all that good stuff. So love y'all. Thanks for the support. It was great to see you here, and I love y'all. I'll be in the Facebook group, obviously in the Academy. If anybody has any topic requests, I know Karen had a great idea for breaking down body composition scales. So I see you, girl. I got that on my list. Y'all let me know what else you want to hear about on a masterclass, or if you have an idea for what Bronson and I should talk about the next time I have him on, because I do want to start having him on once a month and we can talk about something together. So if y'all have requests for the 2 of us to talk about, we can do that and schedule that coming up for sometime in September. All right, ladies, with that, have a wonderful week. Go crush it this week. Don't slow down on your goals. Watch our latest coffee chat. I think it'll be enlightening about how quickly you could actually make your goals happen if you focus on them and you dial in. See y'all next week. Peace out.